How we feeling today, Coach?
Feeling great, man. No complaints. No complaints.
First and foremost, I just want to say I feel a lot better. I hope the people that will be listening can hear it in my voice that I have somehow beat whatever. Well, I won't say completely beat, but I've beat it enough. Whatever it was that is holding and clouding me, that had me down a little bit. It feels like it's leaving me finally, Coach.
About damn time.
Man,
Been too long.
it's been way, way, way too long.
I had to, carry the weight of this show on my shoulders and shit. But
See, here we go. Somebody just trying to pretend like they're doing it all by themselves, even when they're getting all the help in the world.
of course,
Jesus Christ.
Of course, you know how that's how it works.
Yeah, that is how it works. How was your weekend? How was your week? How's it going so far? How's things with you? I haven't seen you in a week, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's been going. That's all I can say, really.
Oh my God, it's been going.
Nah, but like
Man of little words.
The spring season ended not this past weekend, but the weekend before. So I didn't have any games this last weekend. It felt nice to just finally sit back and relax and not have to wake up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. So that was nice, but we're starting soon. I think within the next week or so. So we'll be right back into it. But it's been a nice little break. Just kind of appreciating what's not going on right now is what I can say.
Appreciating what's not going on.
Yeah, as in like my life is not hectic. You know when you're just chilling and you feel like you should be doing something and you feel bad for just relaxing. Then I remind myself, I'm like, all right, let me be thankful for like what's not going on right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a good way to look at things. Normally, when I'm in those type of situations, I just panic and just go like,
well, there you go. Maybe that's a little ounce of
maybe I just panic and go, oh shit, something's about to happen. Whenever things are just going good, I just brace for impact because I just know life is definitely about to take me down for a little bit. But yeah, that's good. That's a very good. Maybe I should take your approach and just be like, oh, things are good right now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. I should take that approach instead of being so pessimistic. But nevertheless, Coach, are you ready to start the show?
Let's do it, man. Let's get right into it.
All right. As always, you all know how it goes. It's the halftime give and go. You know the rules, and the rules must always apply. Number one on the halftime give and go, let's show a little love to the Edmonton Oilers' own Connor McDavid. Great player for the Edmonton Oilers, has been doing this thing right now. Currently, I think the Florida Panthers are up 2-1 in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yes.
But Connor McDavid himself is a very, very special talent. Right now, they are calling him the Kyrie Irving of hockey based upon the magic and the things that he can do on ice. And if that's the case, he's going to have to bring that magic now into the Stanley Cup Finals if the Edmonton Oilers want a chance to come back and beat Florida, because Florida is looking to try to three-peat.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the WNBA, Napheesa Collier. I want to give some love there. She is balling tremendously for the Minnesota Lynx. I think right now they are undefeated. One of, I think, only two undefeated teams is them and the New York Liberty.
Yep.
And she is absolutely killing and doing her thing. So I want to show a little love to her. And hopefully Minnesota has a chance to do something special this season. They look like they are on the path of that, but we've seen that a lot where teams have really great regular season records, and then when it comes down to the playoffs, they kind of fizzle out. All right, Coach, on to you. Asia Wilson of the Las Vegas Aces. What do you got?
Yeah, we know it's been a slow start to the season for the Aces, and the coach has actually come out and called Asia Wilson soft, which is actually crazy to hear, knowing how great she is. But, nonetheless, it has been a slow start to the season. But I think it's worthy of mentioning last week she became the first WNBA in history to record multiple games of 35 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. So I think we can't necessarily point the blame at her. She's doing the best she can in the situation that they are in.
All right, staying on you, Coach Paige Buchers of the Dallas Wings. What's your thoughts on her? How's her rookie season going, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, so far so good. She's coming back from injury. Looks like they're playing tonight. It's going to be her first game back in 4 games. She was dealing with some type of illness. She was under concussion protocol, all that type of stuff. But she's back tonight. She's been averaging 15 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals a game. Hey, man, if that's not somebody seamlessly transitioning into the WNBA, I don't know what is. She's looked great for those Dallas Wings over there, man.
She's playing well. All right, moving to the NFL, Coach. What you got is Nick Chubb.
Yeah, Nick Chubb. Not a Chicago Bear.
Not a Chicago Bear.
Ends up a Houston Texan. It's a 1-year, $2.5 million contract. I think that contract tells you just about everything that the Bears might be kind of eyeing towards. Maybe Nick Chubb wasn't the guy after all, considering such a small contract for a running back. But finds his home in Houston. Let's see if Houston could bounce back this year from a disappointing last season.
Yeah.
But it is concerning because they've called Houston the place where running backs go to die.
Wow.
Because of Joe Mixon.
Yeah, that's true. Well, staying on the NFL and moving to me, a guy that I'm not disappointed is not a Chicago Bear, Aaron Rodgers. I guess it's about time, Coach. The Pittsburgh Steelers have finally finalized a 1-year deal with Aaron Rodgers, and we will get into a conversation a little bit later about what this potentially means for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I'm just going to say this. Hey, Aaron, this could be your last hurrah. This could be your last season. Go out on top. Go out with a bang. Try to do your best to get the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Super Bowl and see if that can happen. But as of right now, I'm glad you finally made a decision so that we can now stop talking about where you may or may not be going. All right, that has been the Halftime Give and Go. As always, I want to remind you all to please follow and subscribe to our YouTube at the Halftime Pod. We know that you guys are liking our content. We know that you guys rock with a lot of our takes, because we see the comments and we see the like buttons being smashed on a lot of our YouTube reels. But we have to remind you guys to always finish up the deal. Hit that notification bell, click that notification and subscribe to make sure you're up to date about everything that we're dropping, from our shorts to our videos, as well as supporting us in that facet, so that way we can continue to give the content that you are enjoying. Because if you're not clicking that bell and you're not notifying us and you're not becoming a subscriber to the Halftime Pod, then YouTube will no longer care about us and their algorithm, and we won't be able to give you the content that you love and you appreciate. All right, so do that. Don't forget that. That's part of the process, and we need it. I won't say desperately need it, because we're not desperate, but we definitely would like it and appreciate it. So thank you. Please click and subscribe to the Halftime Pod on YouTube. All right, you ready for our game, Coach?
Let's get right into it, man.
Oh, man. Some of this is going to hurt me a little bit when we get into it, I think.
Yeah, I think so, too.
I'm starting to get a little emotional. When you get healthy, all of a sudden, all of your emotions come back, too. Because when you're sick, you're just like, fuck it, I don't care about nothing.
Right.
Let's play our game. Who's cooking and who should stay out the kitchen? Number 1 on Who's Cooking. Let's get back to the WNBA, and this is going to be heavy on the WNBA. Minnesota, the Minnesota Lynx. We want to continue to show some love to you guys. It's very good to see you guys turning the corner and getting back to where you used to be. I remember the days of Maya Moore with the Minnesota Lynx. She was somebody that I was a big fan of. They was actually comparing her a little bit to like Kobe and like Jordan. She was like the WNBA Kobe Jordan type of thing. And it's really good to see them back in the fray of things, being a top competitor, a top team. It's nice to see how they are working and playing together. They play really strong, play really good defense. Offensively, it's like they know exactly where to go. Everybody picks their spots. So it's really good seeing a new name kind of been, I won't say a new name, but a different name thrown into the fray for competition and potentially being a team that can win the WNBA championship, because over the last few seasons it's just been a foregone conclusion that we will most likely get a Aces and Liberty type matchup. Now, it didn't always pan out, but based upon the rosters that the Aces had and what the Liberty have, you just kind of assume that these two teams were pretty much on a collision course. So it's nice to see the Minnesota Lynx being a team right now that is kind of like the new addition to the powerhouses that exist in the WNBA. But we could be talking about how maybe one team may not be a powerhouse anymore. But what's your thoughts on the Minnesota Lynx?
Yeah, I'm loving their style of play at the moment. They've looked phenomenal, and Napheesa has looked absolutely incredible.
Yes.
I mean, I've got her stat line pulled up here, and it's crazy, man. Like, this season, in their 9 games, they are 9-0, of course, like we mentioned on the halftime give and go. 25 points a game, 9 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 2 steals, and 1.5 blocks. That's insane, coach.
That's the case for
that's
MVP
type of talk right there.
That's the case for MVP this season.
We will see if she can continue to play. I have no doubt in my mind that she will be able to. The Lynx were kind of a team I was talking about pre WNBA draft that it's going to be exciting what they can do, to see what they could do this year, because we kind of saw their upward trajectory last season. So it's exciting to see and very fun to just watch, like, another team emerge and not just have it be, the Liberty and Aces type of conversation all season. So this is great for the WNBA, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, let's get to another team that's 9-0 in the WNBA.
Yeah, the New York Liberty.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, they're looking like last season's WNBA championship was no fluke. They are literally here to stay, and they mean business when they get on that floor. Now, I don't have any concerns outside of making sure that they can stay healthy. Stu can sometimes get nicked up and get some injuries. Sabrina has a history of getting, kind of hurt and nicked up sometimes. So the only thing about the New York Liberty is their health. But as long as they stay healthy, we could be looking at another back-to-back champion situation like we saw with the Aces at one point. So what's your thoughts on the Liberty?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly couldn't agree more with what you said. It's nice to see the defending champs come right back into this season, playing great ball. We haven't sometimes we haven't seen that from teams that they kind of come right back into the season and just go 9-0 like how the Liberty have. We've seen defending champions struggle at the beginning of the season,
especially in the NBA. It happens a lot. Like that's literally a statistic.
It is a very short turnaround compared to some other teams. You're playing all the way until June, and then you start in October. You know what I mean? Compared to teams ending in March and April, and it's 2 months, an extra 2 to 3 months off. So, not the case for the Liberty though. They're looking great. All their top dogs are balling out. So you can't. There's no reason to doubt them now, but like you said, they have to stay healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Coach, let's move on to our favorite part of the game. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. Who should stay out the kitchen? And number 1 on who should stay out the kitchen, and I'm not necessarily upset about this. I'm just concerned about whether or not this will ever change. And that's where I'm concerned.
Okay.
But number 1 on who should stay out the kitchen is the Chicago Sky, and it pains me to say this. Vandersloot, their veteran guard, is out for the season. They are, I think, 2-5 now.
2-6.
2-6. The last game I saw was them losing to the Caitlin Clark-Liss Indiana Fever, and they lost pretty bad.
That game was in the United Center, right?
Yeah, the Indiana Fever came in without Caitlin Clark and pretty much put belt to motherfucking ass on the Chicago Sky. Now, granted, if everybody remembers when we talked about this prior to the WNBA season, I personally was on the tank for Juju train for the Chicago Sky. Now, unfortunately, they're not bad enough, and they're not tanking hard enough for me because the Connecticut Sun is out here pretty much saying, ha, no, no mas. Juju shall be coming to us. They are making it known, or at least they're playing like they're trying to, put themselves in a position to get Juju. So I need the Chicago Sky to be worse, but my concerns are, I don't know if they have the best infrastructure for development, because I'm not seeing a lot of improvement and it is their second year, so I'm trying to take the gas off a little bit, because the rookie seasons for Angel and Camilla were pretty decent. Angel had a very good rookie season. Camilla had a decent rookie season, but their sophomore seasons is very slumpish. Kaylin started off the season pretty okay. She wasn't necessarily as spectacular as I kind of thought she would come in, but she's hurt right now. So, we'll see exactly how she comes back off an injury and what her sophomore year could look like. But we could be looking at, sophomores just experiencing the sophomore slump this season. However, my concerns with the Chicago Sky is that I'm not sure that they can develop these players that they are drafting and getting. I'm not sure the direction that they have with the makeup of their team by letting a guard like Kennedy Carter go, which I didn't understand why they did that when she was obviously one of their better perimeter scorers and sometimes even one of their better perimeter defenders. So I'm not sure exactly what they're building or how they're building. And obviously, their coaching staff is still up in question as to whether or not they have the chops to put the Chicago Sky into a prominent position that they once were in when they had, the great Candace Parker with him. So that is my true concern about the Chicago Sky is, will this actually turn around? Obviously, I want them to continue to lose because I want them in the Juju sweepstakes. But if you get a player like Juju from that point on, I'm expecting this organization to kind of turn things around. But I'm concerned that they may not have the infrastructure to be what I want them to be a New York Liberty, to be a Minnesota Lynx, to be a Aces, even to be the Golden State Valkyrie, because they look like a organization that kind of knows what they want to do and how they're doing things. And they're going to probably be a good team faster than people presume. So that's my concern about the Chicago Sky right now.
Yeah, I mean, no objections from my end. I definitely agree with you, though. I think the developmental staff in Chicago has been very lackluster at the moment. I mean, it could just be sophomore slumps, you never know. But I mean, the matter of the fact is, we haven't seen necessarily the jump that we expected from Angel Reese when it came to, I think, finishing inside the paint. Yeah. We've seen that she's been able to she's extending her game out to the perimeter a little bit more.
Yeah, she's been more of a point forward.
That's good.
So that part of her game has started to develop a lot more.
I think, and what people like to criticize her for the most is her finishing around the basket. So she's putting up shots, she's getting it back, she's throwing it up again, and then she keeps missing. And it's she gets memes for it, but it's she's getting the damn rebounds, but you got to put the ball in the basket. You know what I mean? And it's frustrating to see, and I'm sure they're trying to work with her. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind they're working on that stuff, but I mean, it's right now it ain't working out too well. So I mean, I don't know if there needs to be somebody else that comes in and helps her with that.
It's a touch thing. She just has to develop a little bit greater touch around the basket.
That's honestly just reps. That's reps in the gym, and maybe she wasn't getting enough of those. Maybe they were too focused on extending her game instead of just honing in on.
Well, I think the plan is for her to be more of a point forward. I think they think that she has the ability to facilitate, push in transition, get the rebound and go, because she does get the rebounds.
Yeah, right.
So I think what they're looking at is to make it a little bit more dynamic is if she's the one getting the rebounds, let her just kind of go with the basketball. That's why I think a Juju would be great on this team, because it gives her that person that she can just outlet the ball to and kind of let them work along with Van Lith. And then Camilla, if she can develop a little bit of a three-point shot, she can work as that trailer and stuff like that. So there is aspects of what I see could formulate and become something good and possibly great. But I do think, like you said, for the sake of trying to develop other parts of her game, it feels like they've kind of neglected saying let's lock in on this. It's like they've almost like we'll get back to that.
Yeah,
Right
right,
now, we
right.
want to kind of see if we can groom this a little bit more, and maybe that works out to her benefit. Maybe it doesn't.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
All right, but let's move on to the last portion of who should stay out the kitchen, and it's another WNBA team. And as we mentioned, I'm a little bit concerned about whether or not they are going to maintain being a powerhouse in the W, and that is the Las Vegas Aces. They have been kind of running the W for a nice little minute. Obviously, the New York Liberty were put together specifically to be the super quote-on team that could go against what the Aces had with Kelsey Plum and Aja Wilson and I forgot Chelsea Gray and a few more of the pieces that they have out there. The Aces have lost some players though. Players have left and went other places to get a little bit more money, get paid, and or the Aces just kind of decided that they wanted to kind of slow down the payroll a little bit. And it feels like maybe their reign on top may be coming to an end, that they may be finding themselves back into like a rebuild mode, maybe trying to draft and develop again. And I'm not sure it's going to happen. But if this continues, the Las Vegas Aces may end up in a situation where they may have to consider trading Aja Wilson. Where she goes, I don't know. But if it doesn't look like they can trend back to being a strong winning franchise, and they have championship pedigree, so I don't want to write them off. They got a great coach. They have championship pedigree. They've done it before. Their record this season is not so great.
Yeah,
I think they're like 4-3. They're like one game above being 500. Now they can get into the playoffs and be scary against anybody, right? They can get into the playoffs and be one of the most scary opponents that you can play, and they can knock somebody off that's been playing good all regular season. But the way that they're looking with the way Becky Hammon is speaking and calling out Aja Wilson and doing certain things. Now, I think the call out is because that's her best player. And if she can yell and say something to her best player, then everybody else
kind of sets that tone.
It sets that tone, right? Like if I can say this to Aja, that means any of you can really get it. Do I think Aja is playing soft? I don't necessarily know if she's really playing soft. Her numbers don't necessarily indicate that, but the record does. The record can indicate that something is not necessarily going the way that obviously the Aces will want. But what I'm saying is if this is the trend and it's going that way and you look like you have a new powerhouse creating between Minnesota and the New York Liberty, obviously being that powerhouse that came and kind of took the Aces down. If that is the case, then maybe the Aces may have to look towards making some moves and kind of resetting things. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I got nothing more to add on that. I agree with all your points. Like as far as I found it interesting that a possible Aja Wilson trade. I mean that's an interesting take. I personally don't know if that will ever happen. I mean, I'm sure they will want to capitalize on value if they know they're not going to be a winning team for a while. But I mean, when you do have Aja, like you're always in the conversation.
And she wants to win, though.
Exactly. So that's my thoughts on that. Like I think as long as she's on the team, the Aces are always going to have a shot at least making the playoffs.
Right.
And then when they're in the playoffs, we know what they can do. They're kind of like. I mean, you could call it recency bias, but kind of like Denver in a way where, they've kind of had a really great run the past couple of years. And, they've been in the championship games. They've won championship games. And now going into the playoffs, maybe they're a lower seed, but, they do have that championship pedigree and experience. So I think that could ultimately come out on top, which we did see in the NBA, kind of them giving OKC a run for their money, forcing it to 7. So could be a similar case for the Aces.
All right, Coach. That has been our game of who's cooking and who should stay out the kitchen. We want to remind you guys to follow me and Coach. We have things going on, a lot of things that we like to share. individually, just kind of catching up with us if you kind of rock with what we do. Plus, we sometimes give some additional spicy takes on things if we're feeling up to it. But we have a lot of things going on outside. Again, I want to remind everybody that Coach K has his AAU club, the 3-Point High Club. He has summer tryouts coming, so if you have kids that you believe have desires to play AAU basketball this summer and want to kind of participate, please definitely hit Coach in his DMs, follow him, and just communicate with him and link with him and go from there. You can follow him at Coach_KD41. And for myself, like I said before, I'm not really working this year for AAU or any club. I might help Coach out just depending on how much he's paying me. He's a little
cents on the dollar.
He's a little cheap sometimes. But, all depends. If I got the time and space, I'll definitely, like always, volunteer, help out, and do the things that I love to do, be around, the kids and show them, some of the things that I know about this wonderful game of basketball. But obviously, me and Coach, we coach for the same high school team, so I'm more so kind of locked in and focused on that. Really excited to start working on our first Zoom conferences to kind of go through like some basketball fundamentals and one-on-ones that we're very excited about. So I'm extremely excited about that, and just want to share some of that with you guys when we get to socials. There might be some clips from different conferences that we've done and that we participate in that you guys can see. But you can follow me at Coach M_got_it for any of that, or if you just want to show me some love or just get an insight on any of my little hot takes that I may have outside of the show. All right. So follow me at Coach M_got_it and follow Coach at Coach_KD41. All right, Coach, you ready?
Let's go.
All right, let's move into the halftime report. Oh, it feels so good to be able to say it like that and not just crack and cough and just and find my lungs on the floor because I'm just dying trying to get breath. All right, so first on the halftime report, let's get right into it. They said, they rumored, they talked about, they discussed, they threw out there to see if we'd catch the bait. And guess what? Just like the fish in water I am, I took it. I took that bait. KD to New York is what they're trying to say was something that could have happened at the trade deadline, that New York was close to potentially pulling it off. Now, to backtrack this, we have to talk about the fact that previously, before KD found himself in Phoenix and before KD found himself in Brooklyn, the thought process was that when he was planning to leave the Golden State Warriors, which everybody could see the writing was on the wall after his infamous, falling out with Draymond Green live on national TV. KD and Kyrie Irving were set potentially to go to the New York Knicks, who at the time had enough cap space for 2 max contracts. Well, we know that didn't happen. KD and Kyrie went to Brooklyn. They somehow got James Harden to come to Brooklyn, and they never won a championship in Brooklyn. So all 3 of those great players came together for a nada. Okay? Now, KD is in Phoenix after Phoenix decides to trade Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and, some picks. A fair amount of picks.
A lot of picks.
I was trying to be nice to them, but they gave up a lot.
Yeah, they did.
To get KD to Phoenix, and once again, nada. Nothing comes out of it. I think they went to the playoffs for that first season. I think KD got there. I think it was a first round exit or a second round exit. I'm not too sure. Yeah. But they didn't make it to the Western Conference Finals. And since that moment, they have been pretty much just bad. Not even really being a play-in team at this point. And so, with the rumors being that the New York Knicks were looking to try to trade for Kevin Durant at the trade deadline, now all of this is kind of positioning itself for the Knicks to potentially go after KD this offseason, knowing that they originally wanted him years prior. He went to Brooklyn. He ended up in Phoenix. Now that they have a chance to get KD, how much are you buying into the KD to New York spectacle? And do you even think it would be a good idea for Kevin Durant to come to New York, or for New York to pursue Kevin Durant in the midst of the fact that they don't have a head coach, which we'll also get into that slightly a little
Sure.
bit.
Yeah. I think it'd be very risky business to make this move if you are New York, simply because you are more than likely having to give up one of two of these guys, either Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby. Probably one of those two you have to give up in that
Or
trade.
you might have to trade Cat.
Or Cat, right. And then a boatload of picks along with that as well.
You might be able to get away with less picks if you trade Cat.
Sure, but regardless, like, you still have to give up a significant amount to be able to bring in a guy like Kevin Durant. And then, your questions still are, how is this team going to transition from, or bounce back from, kind of the lackluster Eastern Conference performance they did put on, even even their semifinals, the second round of the playoffs, not necessarily the best either. It's a tough one to say. I don't necessarily think bringing Kevin Durant on would help their championship odds. I mean, it would help probably in the sports books, but as far as actually helping them win a championship, I don't think that's the best place for Kevin Durant to go. I think New York needs to just retool and prioritize different things that they're doing on the offensive side of the ball, as well as on defense. And I think whichever coach comes in, whether that's, two guys that have been thrown out there, such as Ime Udoka, or, maybe Mike Malone's in that conversation. I know they've talked to Minnesota's head coach, Chris Finch, about interviewing him for the job. So it's going to be interesting to see what path New York goes down. Now, I would like to add a team that I think Kevin Durant should go to, and I think a team and a trade that could actually happen, and I'm going to just admit it, all right? I don't know if you know what NBA Centel is, coach, on Twitter or on X, but essentially it's a parody account of NBA Central that actually reports news and stats and all that stuff. NBA Central is a parody account of it, and they sometimes post fake stuff. Actually, a lot of the times post fake stuff, and fake rumors and all this stuff. I got Centel yesterday. I saw Kevin Durant going to the San Antonio Spurs, and I'm like, wow. But let me say that the reason why I believe that is because I think that's a trade that could actually happen. I think San Antonio, if they're really trying to prioritize maximizing what they could do on Wembanyama's contract right now, this is a move you make. This is a move you make to really try to jumpstart what has been a bumpy start to Wemby's career. He hasn't been playing any winning basketball, and that's concerning for a guy coming into his third season now. You got a guy in De'Aaron Fox that could definitely use some more offensive firepower around him. You've got some decent supporting cast that would ultimately most likely be traded, but San Antonio has their fair share of picks. They got the number 2 pick in this year's draft. They've got a couple other picks that definitely hold some value. So, don't they have two? They have 2 lottery picks. I mean, they can end up trading both of them. Maybe they trade one of them. Maybe they just trade future picks. But I think Kevin Durant to San Antonio would make more sense than KD to New York. And if I'm New York, I don't even think I'm considering looking at Kevin Durant. I think there are different prioritizations that need to happen there.
I 1000% agree with you. So I was trying to, use our little trade machine to see what could actually work between New York and a KD trade. And honestly, the only thing that really works is Karl Anthony Towns for KD. just about everything else doesn't really work. Either New York would have either New York would send too much money away based upon the current contracts that they have, or they would be giving up. They'll be trying to figure out how to give up so much. Like it would include at that point you're looking at Jalen Brunson having to be included at 34 million, mixed in with like a Josh Hart, and maybe you might be able to get away with like a Jalen and Josh Hart, but that might be your best combination. But do you want to give up Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart for KD?
Don't think so, no.
So really your only arguable best move would just be a straight up swap of Karl Anthony Towns and KD. Now, I will say in the past, there has been rumors about how Karl Anthony Towns wanted to play with Devin Booker.
Mm-hmm.
And there has been rumors that even D'Angelo Russell wanted to play with Devin Booker. So maybe there is a world in which that type of deal goes down where you get a Karl Anthony Towns being traded for KD. Phoenix gets their new center of the future, somebody that wants to play with Devin Booker, and maybe they find a way to facilitate a D'Angelo Russell situation to Phoenix, and now you get your point guard, you got Devin Booker, you got Karl Anthony Towns, and somehow you're able to throw Bradley Beal in that mix. Is that a championship contending team with Phoenix? I don't know, but I think it's a better team makeup. I think it's a better team makeup than what they have now.
Yeah.
But I don't want to keep on Phoenix. I do believe that San Antonio is a better place for Kevin Durant. I do think Victor Wembanyama and the NBA is ready for Victor Wembanyama to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm ready. Shoot, I'm ready to see
I just want to keep it. I just want to, I'm not here to dispel my cynical thoughts about how I think business and entertainment works. I believe that the NBA has assets. You call them players. They call them assets. I'm just trying to tell you exactly how this goes. They need Victor Wembanyama in the playoffs. Greg Popovich has moved on to being the president of operations, so they've cleared that part of things with San Antonio. San Antonio has lucked up and gotten the number 2 pick. Who would have thought? And they have the number 14 pick. Great. So now they have assets to package for something wonderful. Who would have guessed it? Now that Greg Popovich is the president of operations. Wow. No wonder San Antonio just so happens to get these great picks at the most wonderfulest of times. Like, let's cut the shenanigans. It's the same way Dallas got the number 1 pick after trading Luka. We can do this and pretend like things are just, circumstantial. I'm not. So I do think KD to San Antonio will happen. I think, but the caveat is everything depends on what happens with Giannis. And a recent report came out that apparently Milwaukee is not listening to any phone calls for Giannis because Giannis has not stated that he wants out. That's the last report about Giannis. Now, I don't know if this is just to keep the Giannis news on freeze for right now until they decide they want to heat it up again. But as of right now, things have shifted to being more so about KD. And I think that's because there is probably more frameworks in place to get a KD trade done more than there are frameworks in place to get a Giannis deal done.
And
I think that's why the whole Giannis narrative has been put on freeze and this KD thing is heating up. But before we finish on KD, I will say I have a hot take with the New York Knicks, and I'm gonna save it till you have your response about what I said about KD, and then we'll end off my little hot take on the New York Knicks, and we'll move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it's important to note that Brian Windhorst went on ESPN. I think he was on First Take, and also Shams Charania has also said this offseason in the NBA is going to be one of the busiest ones ever. There's going to be big moves made, and Brian Windhorst came out and said, soon. as in like NBA draft type of soon.
Well, I can believe
So
that because
that's what kind
yeah.
of makes me excited because I'm like, all right, well, let's see. You know what I mean? Like, let's see. I think that's the time that San Antonio would make a trade for Kevin Durant. I think that's the time a team would trade for a Giannis if they're going to be giving up draft capital because we kind of know the prospects coming out of the draft, kind of where they're going to be at. Of course, like if you look anywhere past 5, then it gets kind of mixed up as far as who goes where.
Yeah.
But that top 5 is solidified. And you know, we're talking about teams, you know, whether it's Dallas possibly trading for Giannis, whether it's one of the other top 5 teams trading for Giannis, or we're talking about San Antonio trading for KD. You know, we know who's going to be picked at those positions more or less.
Right.
So, I mean, they kind of know what player they're getting in return. And I don't know, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what could happen soon. Like, I want to see these stars moved around because right now, I think where some of these stars are sitting, like Giannis in Milwaukee, especially KD in Phoenix, the NBA is just missing out, I think, on a lot on those assets particularly.
Well, don't underestimate the fact that LeBron could move.
That too. I mean, he did opt into his player contract, I believe, for this next season. And honestly, me personally, I think next season might be his last one.
That's what I'm saying.
So,
like I wouldn't be.
But I think he ends it in LA. I don't think he moves.
No,
anywhere.
I don't think he ends it in LA because he's trying to win, and Luka has to dominate the basketball. They're not going to work. They're not going to work. So I don't know. I wouldn't be. I'm not shocked if a lot of names just start moving around.
Yeah.
Only because I think people think that this draft has the potential to get a lot of diamonds in the rough. Obviously, some potential blue chip star players that you think will come in right away and be impactful and be superstars in the league. There's just a lot of rotational talent, potential diamonds in the rough talent, and obviously a few blue chip prospects that you just assume will be superstars in the NBA. So there's a lot of that in this draft. So I'm not shocked if there's a lot of rebuilding teams trying to move, if there's a lot of teams that think they're right on the cusp and they're just missing a superstar like Houston. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot of teams doing stuff like that. But my quick hot take about the Knicks.
Yeah, let me hear this because I'm not going to lie. People, our viewers on TikTok, when you were talking about Brunson getting traded possibly, they're hitting you up on TikTok.
They got mad.
So let me hear another one, man.
My quick hot take about the New York Knicks is all these rumors about how they're trying to go after these coaches who already have jobs. Chris Finch, they've been denied talking to him. Ime Udoka, they've been denied talking to him. Jason Kidd was hot on their radar. That's the one that they wanted, and the Dallas Mavericks are like, there's no way we believe that Jason Kidd is leaving us. We're pretty much nipping that in the butt too. Like, they haven't officially said they're going to deny the conversation, but they're pretty much standing on like, if Jason Kidd leaves the Dallas Mavericks, you're going to be trading for him like you're trading for Kevin Durant or somebody, or like Giannis, if you want Jason Kidd that bad. My hot take is I think all of this is smoke and mirrors and being done because they already know that the coach that they are going to put into place is Jalen Brunson's father, Rick Brunson. But they have to participate in this. Well, we couldn't get this guy. We couldn't get that guy. We couldn't get this guy. Jay Wright has already came out and said, the former Villanova coach, and said, like, I have no interest in being the Knicks head coach. We haven't heard any rumblings about quote unquote Mike Malone or any of the other coaches that got fired during the season. So I think the real story for the New York Knicks is we're going to look up and find out that Jalen Brunson's dad is going to be the new head coach for the New York Knicks. That is my hot take.
I got nothing to add, Coach. I like leaving that off and moving on to our next segment in the halftime reports. Let's talk about it, man. Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers finally goes to Pittsburgh. This is something we've been talking about for a couple of months now. I mean, I honestly could care less. We know he's on his final legs. He's on his last legs. He ain't the same Aaron Rodgers he used to be. But He's always talked very highly of Pittsburgh throughout his time in the NFL.
Yes, he
He's
has.
always had a good connection and relationship with Mike Tomlin.
He has.
It seems like he's doing a great job at bonding with everybody there. Cameron Hayward, the defensive end veteran on the Steelers, hosted a golfing outing for charity or something, and a lot of the Pittsburgh guys came out, including Aaron. Looks like he's got a good connection with DK. I'm sure DK fans are kind of happy to see that because we know DK's had some lackluster seasons and performances the last couple of years.
And they blame it on the quarterback.
And, of course, they blame it on the quarterback. But, nonetheless, Aaron Rodgers signs a 1-year, $13.5 million contract, which was mentioned when these kind of contract negotiations were going on and kind of the rumors were swirling around the league that Aaron Rodgers, wherever he goes, will come for cheap. But it was kind of hard to believe at times, considering this definitely possibly could be his last year in the league. But I think he wants to end off in a place where he wants to be at, and I think Pittsburgh is that place. He loves the people of Pittsburgh. You know, he's came out on an interview before, even when he was still in Green Bay. You know, he got asked a question. You know, what is it? What is your definition of of a person having true grit? And he's like, well, you got to be from Pittsburgh. The people of Pittsburgh got true grit. And he said that all the way from his time back in Green Bay. So he's always had a certain respect for the city of Pittsburgh and just the people around, not just the football organization, but the actual community
the culture
itself.
of Pittsburgh.
Yes, the culture itself. So what do you think about Aaron Rodgers to Pittsburgh, Coach? Do you think this helps Pittsburgh at all? Possibly make some noise? Maybe make a playoff push instead of getting first rounded every year? Or are we going to get the same narrative as always, and Aaron Rodgers is just going to go out and look lackluster?
So I want to say this. I think it's so fitting that we talked about Kevin Durant right before Aaron Rodgers, because I think those two players are literally the parallel of each other. Like they're like Spider-Man meme. Like you like that is exactly who Kevin Durant is. Like he's the Aaron Rodgers of the NBA. Phenomenal talent, great player, kind of a little bit of an enigma. Does his own thing, but wherever he goes, great expectations follow. But somehow the expectations don't ever meet the goals. It don't ever materialize, and you never win. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers.
Like there's been the occasional winning, but it's not consistent winning.
Yeah. And there's not been a lot of. I mean, he's won one Super Bowl.
Yeah.
KD has 2 championships and 2 Finals MVPs. Aaron Rodgers has a Finals. Was he the final? I mean,
he was Super Bowl MVP.
Super Bowl MVP and then one Super Bowl. So it's like they are very similar to each other, and like the fact that you know that they're phenomenal talents, and because they show up, you have these high expectations, but you just never see that materialize. And so my thing for the Steelers is, okay, you got Aaron Rodgers for 1 year. Is he supposed to come in and in that 1 year, Mason Rudolph is supposed to learn so much and just absorb so much of the Aaron Rodgers, I don't know, spirit and energy, and Aaron Rodgers puts him on the yoga and mental treatments and sends him out to Arizona with him to do some peyote and stuff like.
Well, maybe it's not Mason Rudolph. Maybe it's Will Howard out of Ohio State, who they drafted, the young quarterback, the young bull.
Maybe I don't know. I just feel like the Pittsburgh Steelers are setting themselves up for a season of expectations.
Yeah.
When you get a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, no matter how old he is, you have the expectations of performing. I do believe that this also puts Mike Tomlin in a very bad situation, because if they don't get to the playoffs, perform well in the playoffs, and some might even say get to the Super Bowl, this could be Mike Tomlin's last season. Now, do I think that's going to happen? I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to underperform, because I'm not a believer in Aaron Rodgers. What has he shown me outside of his relationship with Mike McCarthy that he can lead you anywhere, that he can take you to the promised land? He hasn't. What has Mike Tomlin shown since having Ben Roethlisberger and having somewhat of the leftover of the Bill Cowher team that he can lead you to a Super Bowl and get a championship? And I love Mike Tomlin, but nothing. So I'm not excited about this. I think this is a desperate situation for both sides. Aaron needed a place to go, and contrary to people's belief, I don't think Pittsburgh was number one on his list. I think the real number one destination was Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
But Minnesota,
but like I told you, Minnesota wanted J.J. McCarthy to be that quarterback.
I think
so.
it was more so Minnesota just was refusing to pay him that money.
13.6.
Yeah.
They had that money.
No, I don't think they felt like a 1-year rental of Aaron Rodgers was even worth that. That's what I mean.
No,
I don't think they felt.
I don't think so.
I think so.
I think if we're talking about contract issues, I think if anything, it was that Aaron Rodgers was going to command a 2-year deal. I think if anything, that was the case. Yeah.
No, I don't think. I
think if it was if we're talking about, which I think actually was the case, is that Aaron Rodgers wanted the 1-year deal at whatever number he's at now. Maybe it was closer to 20 then, right? Maybe it was. But regardless, you just traded Sam Darnold off your books. You got J.J. McCarthy on a rookie contract. You still have that money to pay a quarterback $20 million.
No, I'm not saying that they didn't.
Even for a year.
It's not about saying that they didn't have the money, because that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they didn't want to pay him that for that 1-year rental.
Yeah, so that they didn't want him.
No, I think they wanted him. They just wanted him at their price point. You know, like, it's just like anything. You could want something.
But they knew they weren't going to get him for $5 million.
I'm not saying the price point was $5 million, but maybe it was like 10. Maybe it was 9.
I mean, 13.5 ain't far from 10.
It's far enough.
No.
It's far enough.
Not for the quarterback position.
Yes, it is. It's far enough. What I'm saying is just that I think he wanted to go to Minnesota. And I think Minnesota said, cool, we know you want to come here. We have the leverage. So we're going to pay you this. And he's like, come on. Like, I'm Aaron Rodgers. And they're like, yeah, we know, but you're only going to be here for a year. So why are we going to give you all this money when we could potentially use it for other places? So we'll give you 1 year for 8, 9, or whatever the case may be. You come play this 1 year for 8 or 9, and we technically give you the best chance to win a Super Bowl and walk out on a high. Minnesota had all the leverage. That's what I'm saying. Like, arguably, what I'm saying is they had all the leverage.
Yeah, no,
they didn't have to pay him anything than what they wanted, and whatever he was desiring was obviously way out of their ballpark, and that probably just soured conversations right from the jump. I think this $13.5 million is two desperate situations coming to a middle ground. I don't think Aaron Rodgers wanted $13.5 million. I don't believe that's what he was holding out for. $13.5 million. I don't think that's what he was waiting all this time to sign a contract for. I think he wanted more money than that. And I think Pittsburgh obviously was waiting on Aaron, didn't know what they were doing, kept hearing that he may or may not want to come. But they also had a price point that they didn't want to go over either. And I think they just so happened to find a happy medium. Two desperate situations just kind of came together and found a compromise. And I think that's why he ended up in Pittsburgh. But I don't think that was his first choice. I think Minnesota was his first choice.
I agree with you there.
Yeah, I think Minnesota was his first choice. But ultimately what I'm saying is, if they don't get to a Super Bowl and they don't do well and they don't, do anything this season, Mike Tomlin could get fired. Pittsburgh is obviously going to break that team up. Cam Hayward is probably going to retire. They're going to have to figure out if they're going to pay T.J. Watt just to be a name that they can draw and use for ticket sales, right? They're going to have to figure out if they're going to pay him. Now you're looking at Will Howard and Mason Rudolph as your future. I don't know exactly how exciting that is.
Me personally, I'm a believer in Will Howard. I like what he did at Ohio State.
I'm not a believer in either one of them. I think that they should have done the smart thing, which was just draft Shedeur at 21 when he was sitting right there on the table. But
even in the second, third, or fourth,
right, when he was sitting there repeatedly over and over and over again. I don't know why you would take Will Howard over Shedeur Sanders, but that's
they took him later. They took Will Howard in the 6th.
Okay, well then fine.
In the 6th,
so Shedeur was gone.
Yeah.
So my point is, you had the opportunity to get Shedeur, you didn't get him. You ended up with Will Howard. I'm not a believer in Will Howard. You believe in him a little bit. I'm not. I'm definitely not a believer in Mason Rudolph.
No.
So I don't know what Aaron Rodgers is supposed to do with these for these quarterbacks. But I'll just say this: if they don't win, it's going to be a lot of changes in Pittsburgh.
No, absolutely, and I think it's worthy to mention before we move on. I think this is kind of Pittsburgh's final hoorah before we see Pittsburgh, I think, completely fall off the map for a little bit, because you got to consider, for the longest of time, since Ben Roethlisberger has retired, Pittsburgh has not had to really pay a quarterback. Like, yeah, they had Russell Wilson on the books for a year, but I mean, that wasn't their contract, though.
No,
that was Denver's contract.
Denver's contract.
So, and then, like, they had Justin Fields for a year, and guess what? They didn't pay him much either. So,
and then it was rumors that they did kind of want to keep him, but for some reason he ended up going
I'm interested as to why they didn't.
I want more information on that one.
Absolutely, but yeah, it's interesting to see. Pittsburgh hasn't paid a quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger, so they've been able to kind of distribute their salary cap into different position groups, including what they're going to have to pay T.J. Watt, which I think is the interesting situation. I think they will ultimately pay it, just because they don't have to worry about paying a quarterback for another 3 to 4 years, because I don't think they're going to pay Mason Rudolph. I think Will Howard is the guy, and that's why they drafted him. They're going to expect him to step into that role next year, and TJ Watt's going to make $1 more than Myles Garrett did. I think that's what the contract is aiming for. I think he will get that contract, because I don't think Pittsburgh is ready to, or Omar Khan has the cojones to make that type of trade either.
Yep. I agree. All right. That's been the halftime report. Now let's move on to the halftime predictions. Yeah. Nice little vibe, I love when this beat come on. Makes me want to, let a few bars go, get into my little rap hip hop bag for a second. But I ain't gonna do all that. I don't want to showcase all my talents in one place.
You're like 50 years old.
You keep trying to do this thing to me. We're gonna end up fighting one day, man. Live on this broadcast, we gonna rumble. But let's get into this NBA Finals. Obviously, we know the series decided 1-1. Indiana surprisingly took game 1 from OKC in basically the last minutes of the game, literally the last seconds of the game. And then in OKC fashion, which is something they've been doing all playoffs, is if they get beat, they come back the next game and kind of put belt to ass a little bit. And so we are tied at 1-1, heading to Indiana. Indiana successfully kind of did what I said that they would do in my earlier predictions, which was split in OKC. I did have OKC winning game 1 and Indiana winning game 2, heading home with momentum. So I am a little concerned that it didn't work out that way, because I felt like that momentum would be needed to try to carry back home to Indiana when you're playing a team like OKC. I don't like the fact that OKC is the team coming off the win that's heading into Indiana. So we have game 3 tonight, the day of our broadcast, the day of our recording, we're recording on Wednesday. Obviously, we broadcast on Friday. So we got game 3 tonight, and game 4 will be played after this show drops on Friday. Game 4 will be played that Saturday.
Yeah.
So, let's just get right into it. Who do you have for game 3? And who do you have for game 4?
Give me Indiana winning both games at home. I think they break the OKC streak of not losing back-to-back games this playoffs or really all season. And Indiana wins game 3 and 4.
Whoa, wait a timeout. Timeout. You had OKC in 6. No, you had OKC in 5 when we did our predictions.
Or what did I say I wanted to happen? Indiana in 6.
Okay, I'll give you that. I had Indiana in 7.
I told you, if Indiana wins game 1, I think that causes real complications for OKC. And that's what happened. And I think this series, I know OKC won game 2, right? Cool, great. They got some momentum going into Indiana game 3.
Yeah.
I think this benefits Indiana coming into game 3, because they see the corrections that they need to make coming off of a loss that game 2 was.
Instead of a win.
They know how they need to guard Chet. They know how they need to guard Jalen Williams. You know you're not going to be able to guard Shea, so don't even try to game plan for that.
Right.
I like the matchups they got going on where they got Nemhart on Shea.
Well, I told
they got
you,
Neesmith flying all over the place.
I told you that would be the thing that if I was Rick Carlisle, that's what I would do.
But
take your better defender off Shea and have him defend Jay Will and put Nemhart on Shea and just kind of let Shea, just do what he does and let Nemhart, work as hard as he can to try to make it difficult.
And we know Rick Carlisle is one of the highest IQ coaches in this league as far as making adjustments on the fly. We saw that a multitude in game 1, and that's ultimately why Indiana won game 1.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be another showcase of coaching adjustments in game 3, but I think Indiana's going to come out blazing hot. I think in front of that home crowd, they're going to put on some pressure on OKC. And I think Tyrese Halliburton is finally going to show up for a first quarter because he hasn't done that the past 2 games. I've been begging for it. I've been calling for it, watching the games. This kid needs to start playing in the first half if Indiana has a legit chance of winning this series because he's waiting too soon, too late to actually start making good moves on the basketball floor. He's waiting way too long, man.
Well, he's trying to be the quintessential point guard.
But we see that, but it's not working. Like, we saw that in game 2. It is not working. And why did Indiana ultimately come back in game 1? The motherfucker started scoring. He started scoring the basketball, and that freed up his teammates a lot more.
Yeah, he made shots at the right time. I think I like Tyrese Halliburton playing the point guard position the traditional way. But I do agree with you that he needs to be more of a aggressive scorer throughout the course of the game.
Here's the matter of fact: TJ McConnell played a better game too than Tyrese Halliburton.
But TJ comes off the bench to be aggressive.
No, absolutely. Yeah. But I think we need to see a certain type of aggressiveness from Halliburton to start game 3.
I'm not disagreeing with that. Yeah. I just don't want him to. I just don't want him to get caught up in scoring. I want him to stay true to who he is.
I agree.
But I do think he needs to maintain a level of aggressiveness throughout the course of the game.
Yeah.
But wow, you have them winning both.
I do, and I think
it's ultimately you have them. So you
6.
Ultimately have them winning in 6 because you say they win game 3, game 4. Obviously, OKC go back home, win that game 5. So now the series is 3-2. And then they win game 6 at home to finish the season.
Pat McAfee's going to be in the building cussing out some OKC fans like he did those New York fans. And so it's going to be a scene in Indiana.
So it's not that I can't see that world happening. I just have a hard time believing with the way that OKC has bounced back from every single loss that they've had throughout the course of the playoffs. I just don't know if losing back-to-back games is something that OKC will do, and is something that Indiana can pull off. However, the biggest advantage that they have is in the coach's box. Rick Carlisle has been here, done this before against arguably greater competition, and the OKC coach
Mark
Daigneault has not been here. So I think that is the greatest advantage that Indiana has. I'll say this, my prediction, I do have OKC winning game 3. And I have Indiana winning game 4. And then I have OKC, like I said, OKC winning game 5, Indiana winning game 6, and then they do the back-to-back on game 6 and 7. Only because I think OKC having to try to win at home in game 7 is what's going to make them a little tight. It's going to put a lot more pressure on them. And then that's when the veteran leadership of Siakam and the veteran mind of Rick Carlisle as a head coach comes into full display in game 7. That's how I predicted it from the beginning. Game 1 and 2 I thought would be flip-flopped, but everything else I felt like would play that way out. Hearing you say that Indiana could win game 3 and 4, it's not that I don't believe it can happen, but boy, if it happens, I will be shocked. Like, I will actually be like, wow. And if that happens, at that point, to me, there's no way that if OKC goes down 3-1, there's no way they're pushing this to 7.
No, there's
no way.
I gotta go in the 6.
There's no way.
In 6.
There's no way OKC pushes this to 7 if they go down 3-1. So yeah, all right, coach. Okay.
Making some bold predictions, but
Yeah,
that's
so
what the halftime predictions
let
is
me
about.
just ask this really quickly. What can keep Indiana from winning game 3 and 4? Is it just a Shea explosion, or is it the trio of OKC all having to be balling and all cylinders firing from all three?
I don't even think it's necessarily just the trio, because we saw in game 2 that Alex Caruso stepped up and dropped 20 points and Aaron Wiggins stepped up and dropped 18. I think they need to limit those third, fourth, fifth scoring options to very lackluster games. I mean, that's why OKC struggled to score the basketball in game 1, because who struggled to score in that game? Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren.
Yeah, Shea is doing his thing no matter what.
We know that's going to happen.
And
We're not going to get a bad game from Shea because he's just too great.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. You're not guarding Shea. It's just not happening. But who can you guard? You could have Jalen Williams have a slow game. You could have Chet Holmgren have a slow game. What you need to prevent from Chet Holmgren, and I think this is why he ultimately succeeded in game 2, he started attacking the hole early, and that's what allowed him to build the confidence to step out outside the arc and start hitting those threes.
Yeah.
And that's why he ultimately found success in that game, because guess what? Most of his points came in that first and second quarter. He didn't really do shit in that second half. So I think if Indiana could really just plug that hole of letting Chet get his buckets and letting Jalen get his buckets early, because we know what they like to do with Jalen Williams.
Right.
Shea comes out of the game, they leave Jalen in there to kind of be that still spark plug that revitalizes the bench and gets everybody playing fast.
Option one.
You know what I mean? So if they could limit that, if they could limit what he does as option number 1, and when he's on the floor as option number 2,
they'll be fine.
They'll be fine.
All right. I can't really have too many rebuttals to it, because I agree with everything that you're saying. It's just hard for me to see them winning both of these games, because I haven't seen OKC lose 2 back-to-back games. But I guess if there's a time for that to happen, unfortunately, it would be Indiana doing it to them in the finals. All right, Coach, that has been our halftime predictions. What episode is this, Coach?
It's episode 37.
Episode 37, and we're still going strong. Still, I want to remind everybody to follow and subscribe to our YouTube at the Halftime Pod. Again, we need you to click that bell. We need you to click that notification button, so that way you're up to date about everything that we're doing, as well as following me and Coach. Following me, Coach Malcolm at Coach M_got it, and following Coach Conrad at Coach_KD41. Please, link with us. Hit our DMs, talk to us. Tell us some interesting things that you like about the show, or some things that you don't. Also, we want to remind all listeners and viewers that if you have any artwork, paintings, drawing, photography, or anything that you would like to send us, you can obviously contact me or Coach in our DMs, and we would love to put it behind us, put it on the wall, showcase it, and shout you out on the show for any of your photography or anything that you want to bring or add to our set. So we just want to remind you guys that we're always looking for that. Obviously, to follow us on everything from Instagram, TikTok, and everything like that. And then, obviously to subscribe and like to our YouTube channel. We will be trying to do a Patreon sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We've been a little slow with that one, but lifes. So we'll get back to the Patreon at some point, and I'm actually looking forward to it, because I think there's some very fun conversations that we can have. But this has been episode 37 of the Halftime Podcast. Our producer says if we don't stop, he's going to kick us out right now. So we are going to end the show, and as always, you know how it goes. I'm Coach Malcolm,
and I'm Coach Conrad,
and you know how it goes. See red and bear down, baby.